So, uh, imagine for a second that your absolute favorite Spotify playlist isn't, just a way to get through your morning commute or power through a really grueling workout.
Right.
Imagine if it could actually be the ultimate cheat code to learning an entirely new language. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Right.
Today we are on a mission to explore exactly how and why music acts as a literal shortcut for the human brain when it comes to language acquisition.
It's a phenomenal area of research. I mean, the cognitive science behind this is completely transforming how we approach fluency. It's moving it away from that rigid memorization we all hate and towards something much more organic.
Yeah, and to guide you on this journey, we have pulled together an incredibly diverse stack of sources for you today. We're looking at recent academic studies focused on learners of English as a foreign language. We have hands-on classroom strategies from veteran language teachers who are literally in the trenches every day. And we're also pulling practical real-world learning guides from highly respected institutions like Cambridge English and BSE Education.
It creates a really rich blend. We get to look at this high-level neurological research, but we also get to see the practical, on-the-ground teaching methods that actually work.
Exactly. And I want to speak directly to you, the listener, right now. Because whether you're trying to pick up a few conversational phrases for an upcoming trip abroad, or maybe you're teaching a language to someone else, or you just love those cognitive aha moments, this deep dive is going to give you a totally new perspective on the music you listen to every single day.
It really will change how you hear things.
And I got to say, looking at your setup today, your backdrop looks like a perfect mix of a high-end recording studio and a cognitive science lab.
Yeah.
It is very fitting for the mission today.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I felt it was the right visual for unpacking the intersection of acoustics and neuroscience. There is a lot going on under the hood when we listen to a melody.
Well, let's jump right into that psychology and the neuroscience of it all, the why behind this phenomenon. Because why does listening to music feel so vastly different and honestly so much more effective than just sitting down and reading a standard grammar textbook?
Right. So to understand that fundamental difference, we really have to look at something called the affective filter hypothesis.
Okay.
This was introduced by a prominent linguist named Stephen Krashen. And essentially, Krashen explains that when we try to learn a language, our emotions play a massive governing role.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So if we're anxious or stressed or afraid of making a mistake, this affective filter goes up. It acts almost like a physical brick wall in the brain, and it blocks new language input from being absorbed into our memory centers.
Wait, so anxiety actually puts up a literal neurological wall.
Pretty much, yeah.
How does a catchy beat manage to bypass that?
Because music naturally lowers that filter. It places the brain in a low anxiety, riskless environment. There's a researcher named Murphy in our sources who coined a brilliant term for this. He calls a favorite song a teddy bear in the ear.
A teddy bear in the ear.
Yeah. It provides this incredible sense of emotional comfort and familiarity. And that completely lowers the mental barriers we usually have when we're forced to tackle a difficult new subject.
I do love that visual. Because if you think about a traditional grammar lesson, it often feels like a highly stressful job interview.
Exactly.
They're constantly worried about messing up your verb tenses or pronouncing something completely wrong. But learning through a song is more like having a relaxed chat with a friend over coffee. You aren't being judged by the music.
And that lack of judgment is key. When that pressure is gone, your brain does something quite remarkable. What's fascinating here is a phenomenon known as the din in the head effect.
The din in the head.
Yeah, we more commonly call it getting a song stuck in your head. When a catchy song loops in your mind, it's actually creating a state of unconscious language rehearsal.
So when I'm just walking down the street humming a tune I heard, my brain is actively studying without my permission.
Without you even trying, your brain is actively practicing the vocabulary and the syntax of that language while you're just doing the dishes or walking the dog. You are internalizing complex language structures on autopilot.
Wow.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture of cognitive science, research shows that music and language actually share overlapping neural processing areas in the brain.
They're using the same hardware.
Precisely. This is especially true for people who possess strong musical rhythmic intelligence. For those learners, the rhythm of a song acts as a powerful mnemonic device. The beat of the music naturally highlights where the syllable stress falls.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. And the melody traces the natural intonation of the language. It basically maps the foreign words directly onto the brain's existing musical architecture, making recall almost instantaneous.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we know it feels good to learn with music, and we know the brain likes it. But what does the actual hard data say about fluency? Like, what kind of measurable impact are we talking about here?
The data is incredibly compelling. The sources detail a very recent 2025 study conducted by Javid Babayev that really illustrates the power of this method.
Okay.
Babayev took 20 EFL learners and put them through a highly structured 4-week intervention using strictly music-based instruction.
Just 4 weeks. I mean, that is a blip in the timeline of language learning.
Yeah.
What did a day in that classroom actually look like?
Well, it wasn't just passive listening. They were engaged in targeted activities like guided listening sessions, deep lyrical analysis, and shadowing.
Shadow.
Yeah, shadowing is a technique where you sing along slightly behind the track to perfectly mimic the pronunciation and rhythm.
Ah, okay. And what happens after a month of doing that?
The learners showed a 32% increase in their vocabulary scores.
32%.
Yeah, they also demonstrated a 28% improvement in their listening comprehension and a 22% improvement in pronunciation accuracy.
A 32% jump in vocabulary in a month is staggering. But looking at that, I have to ask, does the type of music matter? What if I only listen to heavy metal or strictly instrumental jazz?
Babayev's study actually provided a fascinating breakdown by musical genre, and it turns out that genre matters quite a bit depending on the specific language skill you're trying to build. Pop music, for instance, yielded the absolute greatest gains in both vocabulary acquisition and listening comprehension.
What is it structurally about pop music that drives that kind of retention?
It comes down to high repetition and simple, predictable melodies. The core vocabulary repeats in the chorus over and over again, which is the exact mechanism required for rote memory retention, but wrapped in an engaging package. On the other hand, if a learner is struggling with prosodic features, meaning the rhythm, the word stress, and the overall intonation of the language, the study found that acoustic and soft rock songs are actually the best choice.
Is that because they have less synthetic production muddying the vocals?
That and the tempo. The slower tempo and the highly clear vocal articulation, typical in acoustic and soft rock, allow learners to really hear and process the individual phonetic sounds and the natural rhythm of the sentences.
That makes a lot of sense.
Now, they also looked at indie music, which had a very different outcome. Indie was found to be weaker for direct vocabulary acquisition because the lyrics tend to be heavily metaphorical and abstract.
Right, a beginner doesn't need a metaphor, they need basic verbs.
Exactly. However, indie songs were fantastic for advanced learners looking to build deep cultural understanding and interpretive nuance.
So you really need to curate your genre based on your current level and goals.
Yeah.
And does the act of singing make a measurable difference? Or is just reading the lyric sheet while listening enough?
Oh, singing is critical. Another study in our stack by Zhang and colleagues directly compared two groups of students. One group learned a set of lyrics by actually singing them, while the control group learned the exact same lyrics by speaking them rhythmically out loud.
Yeah.
The group that sang produced significantly better pronunciation accuracy. When you sing, you're forced to elongate vowels and control your breath, which leads to much more natural sentence-level intonation and fluency compared to just speaking.
That perfectly segues into one of the absolute biggest hurdles of learning any language, which is dealing with how native speakers actually talk in the real world. Because native speakers rarely speak word by word, they mash everything together.
Yes, that phenomenon is known as connected speech. It is a major barrier to listening comprehension because traditional classrooms teach words in isolation, but native speakers naturally link words together in fluid conversation.
Right. The sources highlight a specific nightmare for learners called consonant-to-vowel linking, or CV linking. What exactly is happening there acoustically?
A 2023 study by a researcher named Freakfon focused exactly on this hurdle with ninth grade Thai students. Consonant-to-vowel linking happens when the final consonant sound of one word naturally blends right into the starting vowel sound of the next word.
Give me an example.
Sure, so the phrase just out becomes just out, or fell in becomes felon.
Right. And to a non-native ear, felon sounds like a completely new, unrecognized vocabulary word. They're mentally scrambling to find felon in the dictionary rather than recognizing two simple words they already know.
Exactly. To combat this, the Freakfon study utilized a bottom-up listening technique. Typically, learners use a top-down approach, trying to grasp the overall meaning of a whole sentence using context clues. But bottom-up listening forces the student to focus intensely on the tiny specific acoustic details first.
Ah.
They trained their ears to identify those specific linking sounds before zooming out to understand the whole phrase.
I was actually looking at the playlist they used to teach this bottom-up technique to those ninth graders, and I gotta say, it's pretty great. They specifically utilized Superman. It's Not Easy by Five for Fighting, 2002 by Anne Marie, Perfect by Ed Sheeran, and Runaway by Aurora.
Great choices.
Yeah. What is it about these specific tracks that help their awareness of connected speech improve so significantly?
Well, music relies entirely on rhythm and flow. Singers naturally use heavy connected speech to make the lyrics fit the meter of the beat. If they enunciated every single word perfectly, the song would sound incredibly choppy and off rhythm. So, analyzing the phrasing in popular songs like those is arguably the most authentic, concentrated way to study how words actually linked together dynamically.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you can take this concept and actually curate an ultimate grammar playlist. We have some brilliant recommendations from BSE Education and TalkPaul that match massive pop hits to very specific language skills.
It's a highly practical way to apply the research we've been discussing.
Yeah, let's look at Adele's hit song.
Oh, that's a classic example. Because it has a very sparse, slow start and features her incredibly clear London accent, institutions highly recommend it as a perfect tool for beginners getting used to hearing and processing new words clearly without being overwhelmed by production.
Then you have Ed Sheeran's Thinking Out Loud, which they recommend for practicing the imperative tense, giving commands or instructions.
Right.
But the one that caught my eye was George Ezra's Budapest. They say that fast-paced track is absolutely perfect for learning the second conditional. Can you break down why that song works for that specific grammar rule?
Sure. So the second conditional deals with hypothetical situations. If I had this, I would do that. In Budapest, Ezra sings about giving up all his hypothetical treasures. The fast pace is crucial because it forces the learner to master the tricky contraction I'd.
Oh, like I would.
Exactly. In normal speech, the D in I would is almost entirely swallowed. Hearing it perfectly on the beat trains the ear to catch that subtle grammar cue in rapid conversation.
And for more conversational everyday English, they point to Dua Lipa's New Rules.
Yes, that track is an ideal vehicle for teaching the negative imperative, telling someone what not to do. But more importantly, it's packed with common slang abbreviations. She uses words like ain't and drops the H in them to make it
Right.
It teaches the casual, informal rules of the language that textbooks usually ignore.
Justin Bieber's Love Yourself is another big one on the list. They recommend it for tackling negative constructions, so finally understanding the auditory difference between did and didn't, or do and don't. Plus, it's full of common reductions like wanna instead of want to.
It is important to note, though, that your song choices really need to scale with your current language level.
True.
If you are an absolute beginner, jumping into a fast-paced Dua Lipa track loaded with slang might actually raise that effective filter we talked about earlier and cause severe frustration.
So where should a beginner start, if not with Top 40 Radio?
The sources recommend that true beginners start with nursery rhymes like head, shoulders, knees, and toes to lock in basic foundational vocabulary and body parts. Or very simple, clear pop songs like Bruno Mars' Just the Way You Are.
And then as you naturally level up your comprehension.
For intermediate learners, narrative folk songs are excellent because they follow a chronological story, or classic ballads like The Beatles' Let It Be. Then, once you reach an advanced level, you can really challenge your processing speed and vocabulary with classic rock, complex jazz standards, or highly philosophical songs like John Lennon's Imagine, which demand a much deeper grasp of abstract concepts and cultural context.
Okay, so we have the neuroscience, we have the hard data showing massive improvements, and we have the curated playlists. But how do you, the listener, actually apply this to your own life today? Beyond just opening Spotify and pressing play on Let It Be While You Cook Dinner, what are the actionable strategies here?
To really harness this cognitive shortcut, we can look at the methods of veteran language teacher Kara Jacobs. She employs a concept called the triple input method.
Triple input.
The idea is that for maximum memory retention, you need to hit the brain with 3 streams of information simultaneously. The audio input, which provides the rhythm and melody, the visual input, which is the context provided by a music video or imagery, and the text input, which is the written lyrics.
And reading through her classroom strategies, she has a very specific, unbreakable rule for how to introduce a song.
Her cardinal rule is never start with the grammar.
Right.
If you lead with a dry grammar lesson, you instantly kill the engagement. Instead, you start with a short, compelling story about the artist, the song's historical context, or the plot of the music video. You build curiosity first. Only after you have engaged the learner's emotional interest do you actually play the song.
I noticed she also heavily emphasizes translating the lyrics into your native language, which feels controversial. I feel like traditional language advice always yells at you to stop translating in your head and to just think in the target language.
It can seem counterintuitive, but in this specific context, understanding the exact nuanced meaning of the lyrics builds a deep emotional connection to the song. As we know from cognitive science, emotion cements memory. If you know exactly what Heartbreaker Joy you are singing about, you care about the words, and they stick in your long-term memory far more effectively than abstract sounds.
That makes total sense. Cambridge English also provided some highly engaging, completely actionable activities in the sources that you can try right now at home.
Oh, these are great.
Yeah, one of them is syllable clapping. You print out the lyrics of a song, underline a few complex words, and guess how many syllables they have. Then you play the track and literally clap along to the strongly pronounced beats to see if you were right.
That physical connection is vital. It forces your motor cortex to engage with the rhythm of the language, locking the prosody into your muscle memory. Another excellent exercise Cambridge suggests is called Spot the Difference.
I like this one.
It's fun. You take a lyric sheet and purposefully change 5 to 10 nouns. So if the original lyric says town, you cross it out and write village. Then you play the song and actively listen to spot the errors.
It turns passive listening into a detective game. I was really drawn to the creative drawing activity they outlined too. You play a song, but you pause it every 10 to 20 seconds. You quickly draw whatever comes to your mind based on the vocabulary you just heard. By the end of the song, you use your own sequential pictures to write a short creative story.
That is essentially a full brain workout. It forces a cognitive leap from auditory input to visual representation and finally to your own written linguistic output. Ultimately, what all these strategies from Cambridge and Carr Jacobs have in common is active listening. You can't just have the music washing over you in the background while you focus on something else.
You have to be present with the material.
You need to create customized playlists that target your weaknesses, engage physically with the text, and most importantly, you have to sing along. Singing along forces your mouth, tongue, and lips to practice the unfamiliar physical shapes of the new language. It trains your articulatory muscles and helps you overcome that lingering psychological fear of mispronunciation.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at everything we've covered today, the core takeaway for you, the listener, is that listening to music is not just a fun study break or a passive hobby. It is a highly efficient, scientifically backed learning tool that rewires how you absorb information.
Absolutely.
It lowers your anxiety, it dramatically improves your memory retention through neural overlap, and it teaches you the authentic, messy, connected way that real people actually speak in the real world.
It completely bridges the gap between the sterile textbook and the dynamic street. And looking at all this data, it raises an important question, something for you to mull over after we sign off today.
Oh, let's hear it.
If music is the ultimate biological key to decoding foreign languages, how much of our own native language is actually just a complex, deeply ingrained song that we've simply forgotten we're singing?
Wow. That is going to keep me up tonight thinking of the rhythm of my own sentences. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Now, do yourself a massive favor. Go take the science and strategies you just learned, open up your music app, and go radically update those playlists. Happy listening, and we will catch you next time.